What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, it's the Game Week 5 preview, so I'm going to go through a little bit of midweek information, talk about wildcard windows, captaincy, free hit, and answer some of your questions as well. So let's get straight into it. So I thought I'd start with a little bit of midweek info. We got Champions League and Carabao Cup games happening this week. Some of those games have already happened, and for the ones that haven't, we've had a bit of press conference information as well. So let's start with Arsenal. They played their first Champions League game last night. They used the same front three as they did against Nottingham Forest. So Eze on the left, Gyökeres through the middle, and then Madueke on the right. Madueke's not really a long-term option because we know Saka will be back in that 11 as soon as he's fit. Gyökeres first choice number 9, and Eze seems to be ahead of Martinelli right now. I don't think anyone can guarantee that Eze's going to start every single game that Arsenal have. That seems quite unlikely, but he does seem to be first choice. If you want to take a punt at 7.5 million, maybe he's the one in midfield. With Gyökeres, he was subbed on the 65th minute last night. Now, that might be because they got a big game against Man City at the weekend, but it was 0-0. It's not often your number 9 gets brought off at 0-0, especially when you don't have a direct number 9 replacement. I know Marino can play there and he's done it well. I know Trossard can play there well as well, but it's not often that that kind of number 9 gets subbed at 0-0. I was saying yesterday that Gyökeres is Arsenal's Haaland or Isak. Haaland's never getting subbed to that 0-0, I don't think. So maybe he's not quite there in terms of the minutes. Maybe it's just because he's played a lot recently. We know, back in game week 1 against Man United, he got subbed before the 60th minute. He was having to build up match fitness. He played twice for Sweden during the break. Perhaps this is all tying in, but it's a slight concern, I would say. I think ultimately, he's still a pretty good pick, but you've got to temper your expectations. There could be some early subs along the way. He did have a pretty nasty cut to the back of his head, but I don't think that was the reason he got brought off, because that happened in the first half. They bandaged him up and he just carried on playing. So I don't think that was the reason he was brought off. But it's just interesting, 65 minutes. But it could just be because of the Man City game. And ultimately in the Champions League, there's 36 teams. 24 of them have a chance of going through to the knockouts. Only the top 8 get through automatically. Everyone else from 9 to 24 goes into playoffs for the knockout round. So maybe that match just wasn't as important as the Man City game is at the weekend. I still think Gyökeres is a good pick. Let's temper our expectations a little bit. With Arsenal elsewhere, Odegaard missed out through injury. Saliba was back on the bench, but Mosquera started again. And the fullbacks were Timber and Calafiori. Calafiori getting a lot of minutes right now. With Unai Emery and Aston Villa, he confirmed that Youri Tielemans' injury is better than expected. Maybe in 1 or 2 weeks he'll be available. So it looks like he's going to miss game week 5, potentially game week 6 as well, and then could be back for Burnley at home in game week 7. I doubt many people own him, but I thought I would mention it. Maresca for Chelsea, really interesting. He said tomorrow, for their Champions League game against Bayern Munich, Robert Sanchez will start. Philip Jorgensen will play games in the Premier League, Champions League, FA Cup, and Carabao Cup. We have so many games that Robert cannot play them all. Now, as soon as I tweeted that last night, got a lot of replies from Sanchez owners who say, well, now I've got to wildcard, I've got other issues, now this. I wouldn't panic just yet. There's no way, in my opinion, Sanchez gets benched this weekend for Man United away. And most people, hopefully, have got a backup playing goalkeeper anyway. Even if it's someone cheap like Dubravka. So if there's the odd game that Sanchez misses, at least you've got Dubravka that can come on. But I think long term, that probably rules Sanchez out as an option. So if you are wildcarding soon, there's no way I would pick him. Because the problem is, if he is going to miss a game, it's likely to be one of the easier ones, right? If you're going to rest your goalkeeper, which most teams don't do, by the way. So I do find this a little bit odd. Why not just play Jorgensen in the Carabao Cup only and let Sanchez have Premier League and Champions League games like someone like Ray? I don't get it, but whatever. It's going to be like Sunderland at home in 9. I think a lot of people, as we'll talk about in a minute, will wildcard before then. So I don't think this information from Maresca is enough to wildcard. I guess if you've got a ton of other options, you could use it as an excuse. But he's going to play most games in the Premier League, so don't panic just yet. Also, make sure you're following Tyler Nadeem on Twitter if you're not already. Tyler_Nadeem_90. Like Ben Crellin, they do a lot of blank and double game week predictions and stuff like that. They tweeted last night to say, Palace's cup win tonight, so they beat Millwall in the Carabao Cup, gets us closer to potential FPL blanks and doubles in the first half of the season. The 4th round draw is next week. will reveal their opponents and the final hurdle. So I'm not going to get into why there could be blanks and doubles. Go and follow Ben and Tyler. They'll tweet about that quite a lot. I just wanted to make you aware it could happen. If it does happen, they're going to be very small blanks and very small doubles. I think it's also possible that it could be that the blank happens in the first half of the season, but the double doesn't happen until the second half. This is not a reason to save all your chips. But if you're not, like, let's say you're like me, right? You've played your wildcard, you've got your free hit left. Maybe it's a reason to hold free hit a little bit longer just to see what happens. But hopefully when the draw happens next week, smarter people than me, like Tyler and Ben, James from Planet FPL as well, will talk about this and they'll explain how it might happen, what the chances are, and we'll just discuss it again next week. It shouldn't affect many people's plans for Game Week 5. I just wanted to mention it. So speaking of chips, let's take a quick look at some potential wildcard windows over the next few weeks. Basically, if you've got the wildcard left, you're probably either saving it until Game Weeks 12 or 13, or you're using it in one of the next 4 game weeks, 5, 6, 7, or 8. Now, the reason to save it until 12 or 13 is because in Game Week 12, there's a fixture swing for Liverpool. Game Week 13, there's one for Man City. And shortly after that, there's actually a fixture swing for Newcastle as well. So all of a sudden, you might want a Haaland Salah draft and other players from those teams, plus some Newcastle players as well. And if your team can be managed pretty nicely over the next 4 weeks, then there's every reason to save it until later on. But if you don't think you can get through the next few weeks, it's also okay to use it. And by the way, you could make an argument that just getting a Salah and Haaland draft right now is also worthwhile and it sets you up nicely for the long term. It's all about how you want to play it. So either you commit to 12 or 13 or you work out whether you're using it in 5, 6, 7 or 8. So let's talk about those different weeks. Game week 5, I've already mentioned this week, I'm not a big fan of, specifically because of Arsenal playing Man City. Now, I don't think it's a terrible week to wildcard, but I think for most people, if you can get through this week, you're much better off saving it until 6, because that's when Man City's fixtures get good, and 7 is when Arsenal's fixtures get good. How many returns are we expecting from those players this week when they play each other? Like, Arsenal could get a clean sheet. They're just that good defensively, but then your Man City attackers are blanked, or maybe Haaland scores 1 goal, gets a 6-pointer, but then your Arsenal defenders are conceded. Now, sometimes you will get attackers playing defenders. That's inevitable, but on a wildcard, you can not have that, right? But you would have to in Game Week 5, because I would want 4 to 5 players from those teams if I was wildcarding in 6, and I just wouldn't want them in Game Week 5. So I would try and ignore Game Week 5 wildcard if you can, but if your team's been absolutely destroyed by players that aren't starting or injuries are mounting up, then fair enough. Game Week 6, as I've just mentioned, reason to do it is a big fixture swing for Man City, so you can get in Haaland, potentially Reinders, maybe Donnarumma if you want to go for him, or Vardy or someone like that. The only slight issue is it doesn't allow you to triple captain Haaland. I will say that I don't think that's an issue. I think we're getting to the point now where everything's being exaggerated. Haaland is absolutely must-have. You've got to triple captain him against Burnley, and Salah's a write-off. I just don't think it's that clear-cut. There will be other opportunities later on to use your triple captain. Like, I would not wildcard in 5 just so you can use your triple captain in 6. I think that's absolute madness. I think Haaland is really good in 6, but if you look later on, like Game Week 13, Haaland's at home to Leeds. Perfectly good use of triple captain. If you go to Game Week 14, Salah's at home to Sunderland. Really good use of triple captain. Game Week 15, Man City at home to Sunderland. Again, you could use Haaland triple captain. The only thing to say is Game Weeks 13, 14 and 15 are weekend, midweek, weekend. So there's shorter rest in between games. But I just don't buy into this. You've got to triple captain Haaland in 6. He's a really great option, but you will not get stuck with when to use your triple captain later on. You could also potentially offload some Liverpool players. So Everton at home this week's not a bad fixture for Liverpool, but then it's Palace away in 6 and Chelsea away in 7. So if you've got like Verts, etc., they might be okay to keep this week, but then you wildcard them out, you get your Man City players in. And also it's not a bad week to buy Cole Palmer back. We'll see how many minutes Cole Palmer plays against Bayern, and then we'll see how many he gets against Man United in Game Week 5 to give us an idea of what his minutes are going to be like moving forward. But if they look good, then Brighton at home is a perfectly reasonable window. So you can get your City players in, including Haaland, and get Palmer in as well. Game Week 7 is the Arsenal fixture swing, basically. This now looks like a slightly weaker wildcard point because I think most people want Haaland. I think before you could have made a case to, free hit maybe Haaland in because long term you really want Salah, so you just free hit 6, maybe wildcard 7 or something like that. Or maybe you bring Haaland in, then wildcard him out in 7, but that doesn't make sense because he's got Brentford away. So that's the reason to go in 7, because that's when Arsenal's fixtures get really good. But whichever week you wildcard 5, 6, 7, you're going to put 2 to 3 Arsenal players in anyway. So I don't know, maybe there's something I'm missing there, because a lot of people were talking about 7 before. But I think given what's happened over the last few weeks, that looks like a little bit of a weaker window now. You might as well just go in 6, I think. I guess reason to go in 7, maybe you've already got Haaland in your team and you just want to get your Arsenal players in later. So you've got Haaland for 6, you don't need to wildcard, you can save it till game week 7. I guess that's a reason to do it. Game week 8, for those of you that are in that terrible position of owning Man United players, they've got Chelsea at home this week, Brentford away in 6, Sunderland at home in 7. Yes, they're not a very good team, but the fixtures are quite good outside of Chelsea. So if you've got like Bruno, you could keep him for those weeks, then wildcard afterwards. Again, saving your wildcard just to keep Bruno for a few more weeks is probably not needed, but you might have a perfectly reasonable team outside of that. It's also another good window to buy Palmer, Forest away that week in 8, and then Sunderland at home in 9. And also, if you're not one of those people that's completely written Salah off, you could do the Salah to Haaland switch with free transfers in 6 if the rest of your team looks good. And then if you want Salah back from 8 onwards, you could wildcard him back in. That's another way to play it. For what it's worth, I think most people now are going to wildcard 6. I just think Salah's only getting returns after the 90th minute. Haaland looks like he's absolutely smashing it. It's like everything is just coming together to perfectly, wildcard in 6. It's after the Arsenal-Man City game. It just makes a lot of sense. So that's probably the best window, but I think there's absolutely reasons to use it in 7 and 8 as well. But it's difficult for most people to look past that Burnley fixture. I certainly, like I said, would not let triple captain put you off wildcarding in 6. It's not a big issue in my opinion. There'll be plenty of opportunities to use it later on. And by the way, let's say you don't want to use it in 13, 14, 15. You've got Palmer against Sunderland at home in 9. You even got Bruno Fernandes against Sunderland in 7 if you really wanted to have massive FPL pain. So let's talk about captaincy for game week 5. And I think this is one of the toughest weeks so far to pick a captain, because either the fixtures are not great or you haven't got that much confidence in the players you're looking at. Apart from maybe Salah, but even then, I think a lot of people are kind of down on him as an option right now. And it's the 12:30 kickoff on Saturday, which in my opinion should not really matter. But they are playing Champions League midweek, and it's a derby as well. So it might not be the most ideal time to captain Salah, but because of the rest of the options, I think he probably is the standout this week against Everton at home. I think Everton have really improved this season, but primarily in an attacking sense. They're still a really good defence, and they will pick up plenty of clean sheets this season. But against Liverpool away from home, that's going to be tricky. They've conceded 1.55 expected goals per 90 so far this season. It's not exactly a super watertight defence. So although captaincy feels a little bit rough this week, I think if you've got Salah, he has to be the one. We can wait and see what happens in the Champions League midweek, but I don't really think that should have a massive effect, whether he scores or not. I know he's not done well so far in terms of underlying stats and stuff like that. He's relied on a few penalties, etc. But like the idea that we should write him off already, I just think is absolutely crazy. So if you've got Salah, I think he's a default captaincy pick this week. Outside of him, I mean, take your pick, flip a coin. I wouldn't captain Haaland if you got him. Of course, he's capable of scoring against anyone, but Arsenal away is probably the toughest fixture he's going to have all season. And I'm including Champions League matches in that as well. Like the Arsenal defence is just that good. So I wouldn't captain Haaland if I had him. You could look at Palmer, but I'd be really conscious of his minutes. Let's see what happens against Bayern. Let's see what Maresca says ahead of Man United game as well. But potentially you could look at that. Man United have conceded 1.63 expected goals per 90 so far this season. Weren't great whatsoever against Man City. But this is a home game for Man United. So I don't look at Palmer as an obvious pick. But you could go there and he would be a huge differential. His ownership's come down a lot. And I don't think most people that have got him would captain him. Then you've got Chris Wood. There's a question later about Forest players. Should we sell them, etc. I wouldn't put too much stock into what happened against Arsenal, especially after the international break. I think Wood should play 70, 75 minutes plus, and he's on penalties. So that's why I've put him ahead of Watkins against Burnley away. But Watkins might be on penalties, because Tielemans is out. McGinn took the first penalty last night in the shootout, which actually means he might have been first choice, like generally, outside of shootouts, but he missed. and then Watkins scored. So maybe Watkins takes the next one. And he's against Sunderland away. I think without penalties, like let's say there was no penalties in either match, I'd go Watkins over Wood. But the penalties do mean something. That's why I've got Wood slightly ahead. I mean, Villa did score last night, the first goal of their season. So that's a big, start for them. I don't know. Burnley just seem to be the worst defence in the league so far. So I think I'd have Wood. This is what I'm talking about of options. I'm talking about Chris Wood and Ollie Watkins for captaincy. It just doesn't feel like a great week to do it. And then I put Yorkeresh on the graphic before the game last night. I don't think I could go there now. I don't think he's terrible against Man City, but what will his minutes be like? How good will that Man City defence be? Rodri's back now as well. I don't think I would go there. The other player I think people are going to mention and not be happy with that I haven't talked about is Semenyo. I mean, he's looked great so far. Newcastle are not pushovers, but Bournemouth are at home. If Kluivert doesn't start, Semenyo will be on penalties. I mean, to be honest, if I was making this graphic again, I'd probably have Semenyo on there ahead of Yorkeresh. So I really don't think he's a terrible option. But yeah, I would go Salah if you've got him. For those of you that don't, it's Palmer if you're confident in the minutes, and then maybe Wood or Watkins. But it's just one of those weeks that's just not great once you're past Salah. So you can maybe even just take a punt if you don't want to go for him. So let's talk about my free hit draft for Game Week 5. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't have much fun putting this together. It just doesn't feel like a great week to free hit. Now, some of you might be sat there with 4 to 6 Arsenal players who you want long term, but you don't necessarily want this week. And maybe you were planning for free hit 5, in which case, fair enough. But I would argue that most other people cannot have a team that's much worse than this. I think there will be better spots to use the free hit later on. Maybe there won't be, but I don't know. It just doesn't feel that inspiring, I would say, this team. But this is what I've gone with. Triple Liverpool against Everton. I've gone with Salah captaincy. I think he's the best captain, so he's got to be in the free hit team. And then I've actually gone for 2 defensive players from Liverpool, which is Alisson in goal and Van Dijk in defence. Now, Van Dijk's an obvious pick. If I knew for 100% certainty that Kerkez was going to start or Frimpong was going to start, I would probably go with them instead. But I think there has to be slight doubts with both of them. We've seen Szoboszlai play right back, and at some point Robertson's going to play. Could it be in a derby like this, straight after a Champions League game? Possibly. Let's see what happens in Liverpool's Champions League game. If Robertson starts that, then Kerkez maybe starts at the weekend, and that's slightly different. And for what it's worth, Kerkez probably does start, but I don't know, he got taken off early the other day. I just wouldn't have had that much confidence. And then as a double up in defence, I've gone for 2 Fulham players, Joachim Andersen and then Tete as well against Brentford at home. They'll have a really good chance of a clean sheet this week. And ultimately, and I've found this every week I've built a free hit team so far, because of the pricing this year, you've got to go cheap somewhere. You can't just throw in loads of expensive defenders. So I've gone for double Liverpool defence, double Fulham defence, Salah captain in midfield, then Cole Palmer after we see what happens in the Champions League. Obviously, just monitor that. If he doesn't look like a great option against Man United, then take him out. But I find it really hard to believe that if he's fit, that he's not going to get good minutes in a game like that. So he should be fine. Semenyo I just spoke about, he's in as well. And then I've gone for Mitoma against Spurs. I'm not really that enthusiastic about that pick, but I think he's okay. And I don't think there's a huge amount of better options for that price or below. You could go like ultra defensive contribution and go for Elliot Anderson maybe against Burnley away. I don't hate that. But Mitoma at home, I spoke about him for Wildcard 4. I think a lot of people were against that. He went and scored last weekend. But this is a guy that got like 10 goals last year. He's got pretty decent goal threat, so I don't mind that. Worth saying though, Spurs defence has been good so far. So it's not the perfect pick, but I don't think there are many perfect picks this week. And then up front, I've gone for Evan Nielsen, Watkins, and Chris Wood. I spoke about Watkins and Wood quite a bit with captaincy, so they had to be in there. But what it's worth, I probably would just about pick Yorkeresh ahead of Evan Nielsen if I had the money, because he's on penalties and Evan Nielsen doesn't look like he is. But money was tough. I can't remember how much I had in the bank for this draft, but it wasn't very much whatsoever. And there's not really any other downgrades that I would want to make to fit Yorkeresh in. Like, he's not that important. But yeah, definitely no Haaland in a free hit team. Double Liverpool, double Fulham defence. I quite like going all in. I know people see that as risky. You don't have to do it. It's your free hit team. But yeah, something like this. Do I like it? Not really, but I'm not sure there's anything out there that's massively, massively better. So if you're ever playing chips like Wildcard and free hit and you're not quite sure which players to go for, or there's 1 or 2 positions you're not quite sure about and you want a second opinion, you can use the tools over on the My Team tool on Fantasy Football Hub. So this is my team for Game Week 5. let's say I was playing my free hit this week, I can click the AI teams button at the top and that will generate a free hit team for me. Now, interestingly, a lot of these players are the same that I've just spoken about. So the midfield I went for, Salah, Semenyo, Palmer and Mitoma. The hub team is exactly the same apart from Minter instead of Mitoma, and he's a huge differential. So I quite like that pick. They've also gone for double Liverpool defence, but instead of Van Dijk and Alisson, it's Van Dijk and Konate, which is fine. Joachim Andersen in as well. He's just a great pick because of defensive contributions. Then it's Sells in goal. So not everyone is completely writing off Forest players right now. And then the front line is Watkins, João Pedro, Mateta. As always, that doesn't mean you have to pick that exact team. But if there's one or two spots you weren't sure about and you wanted a second opinion, you can use a tool like this. And there's 50% off at the moment. And if you sign up and don't win your mini, you will get your money back. Terms and conditions do apply. All the links you need, description below. But it's the same for Wildcard as well. There's a ton of tools on it, by the way. It's not just these couple. But I thought as we were talking about free hit, I would mention them. So if you want to check it out, 50% off at the moment. Scan that QR code on screen or use the links in the description below. So let's get into some of your questions. People will be wildcarding soon. Yes, they will, as discussed earlier, probably in Game Week 6. Any early thoughts on whether we should chase defensive contributions or stick to classic FPL attacking defenders? I would think about defensive contributions quite a lot when picking your defenders, especially on wildcard, because you're going to be stuck with them for quite a while. The chances are over the next few weeks after you wildcard, you're going to want to make attacking changes instead of changing like 4.55 million defenders around. So definitely give it some strong consideration, and it is looking quite important. So take Senesi, for example. You look at his next 6 game weeks: Newcastle at home, Leeds away, Fulham at home, Palace away, Forest at home, City away. He's a 4.6 million defender. So some weeks when he's got a bad fixture, you can bench him and you play him in the good ones. But also, things don't always work out like perfectly in FPL. Sometimes you'll have to play these players in tougher fixtures. So for example, with Senesi, if you had to play him against Palace away in 8 or City away in 10, you might not feel quite as bad about it as you would have done in previous seasons, because he can go and get you those +2 defensive contribution points. So as long as Bournemouth don't get smashed like 4-5, 6-0, there's every chance he could finish on 3 or 4 points, even in a more difficult fixture. That's something that those attacking defenders don't necessarily offer, because when they've got a tough fixture, not only is it more difficult to get the clean sheet, it's also more difficult to get the attack and return as well. So for those 4.5 to 5 million defenders, where they're going to be on your bench a lot of the time, I would definitely look at defensive contributions. And also, these players are cheaper as well. Once you start getting to the top bracket, like 6 million, not many of those defenders are great for defensive contributions anyway. And it's not the be-all and end-all, but if you can save money and get additional points, that allows you to spend more in attack. That's just another reason to look at them. But the biggest reason, I think, to look at defensive contributions, especially this season so far, who are the attacking defenders? We don't really have like a trend. We don't have Munoz getting goals and assists what feels like every single week right now. And that doesn't mean it'll always be the case. Right? Munoz will go and get probably 8 to 10 attacking returns over this season. But when you think outside of him, who the attacking defenders are, there really isn't that many. Like, start of last season, Anthony Robinson absolutely smashing it for Fulham. Like, he hasn't played that much because of injury and stuff. Like, there just isn't that many attacking defenders. If I go through the Premier League table just quickly, like Liverpool, Frimpong, you don't know if he's going to start. Kirkez is just not actually that attacking. Like, for Bournemouth last year, I know he got quite a few attacking returns, but his underlying data wasn't that special. And so far, it's not been that great either. And I think there are slight concerns about his minutes. I think he will start the majority of games, and most of the time he'll get past 60. I don't know if I'd want to spend that much money on him, though. You look at Arsenal, Calafiori could be great, but I think you play it safe and go Gabriel. Spurs, Porro, is he that attacking right now? No set pieces. And on the left side, Spence, Udogie rotating. You're not going to go there. You're looking at centre-backs again, like Van de Ven and Romero, who can go and get you attacking returns. But Romero could maybe get you defensive contributions at some point. Who knows? Bournemouth, I think you're definitely going for the centre-backs. Chelsea, Kukureya just got benched. So I don't think most people are going there. Everton, you're going for Tarkowski. Sunderland, you're probably skipping. Man City, maybe Vardio. You could go for him. Aït-Nouri's obviously injured. I think for Crystal Palace, Munoz is good, but Lacroix is 0.6 million cheaper for defensive contributions. Newcastle will worry about when their fixtures get good, but we don't have a Lewis Hall attacking all the time right now, and Livramento is not massively attacking. You get the point, right? There are not many attacking defenders. Dorgu, wing back at Man United. Like, is he going to play every game? Possibly not. Nottingham Forest, the defensive contribution players are not getting defensive contributions right now, but their good fixtures are about to run out. There just isn't that many attacking defenders. So it's not even, as much as I think defensive contributions are important, it's also there just not that many good alternatives. So you should strongly look at them, I would say, on Wildcard. So what do you think about Nottingham Forest players? Do we move them on or do we hold them? Now, where possible in FPL, I like to keep things simple. We're all guilty of overthinking at times, but if you can, keep it simple. Burnley away game week 5, Sunderland at home game week 6. These are the best 2 fixtures of the first 6 game weeks that Forest have had. I just don't really think there's any more to it than that. If you've got Forest players like Sells, Milenkovic, Nico Williams, Gibbs White, Elliot Anderson, Chris Wood, surely you just play them and you really don't give too much thought to selling them because of how good the next 2 fixtures are. And it's as simple as that. If you want to sell them for game week 7 onwards, fair enough. The fixtures get a little bit worse then. Newcastle away, Chelsea at home, Bournemouth away. Personally, I won't want any Forest players then. But there's no need to go out of your way to sell them this week or next week. Also, go and look at that free hit draft I came up with for game week 5. It's not that interesting or inspiring. So who are you even selling these players for? So I would keep them. The only people, in my opinion, that should be considering selling a Forest player is Murillo owners. And that's if he doesn't make the weekend, if he's out injured. Ange Postecoglou held a press conference yesterday, which I forgot to include earlier. And he said they're taking it day by day with Murillo and that he wants to be fit for Saturday, but it doesn't necessarily mean that he will be, of course. We'll have to wait and see. The one good thing, at least from his Spurs days, Ange Postecoglou is very open with injury news. So I'm sure you'll find out on Friday whether Murillo is fit for Burnley. And if he is, you keep him. If not, you can think about selling him. That's the only people I think should be looking at selling Forest players. For the rest of you, just save a transfer and play them in these 2 good fixtures. Like, could Ange Postecoglou bench some of those players because he's got preferred personnel elsewhere? Possibly, but I find it very unlikely. I think they'll all probably start. And would I buy Forest players right now? Probably not. The only way I would do that is if you're guaranteeing that you're going to wildcard game week 7. Even then, I'm not sure I'd be that excited about them. So definitely keep them, but I'm not sure I'd be buying right now. So Lucas Paquetá, stick or sell? I'm considering viable options like Reinders or Dewsbury Hall. Now, anytime you're thinking about making a transfer, I would consider how high value that move is. So, for example, in game week 6, a lot of people are going to sell Salah to get Haaland, which looks like potentially quite a high value move when you factor in captaincy because of how good Haaland is against Burnley at home. So that's a good use of transfers. Is selling a player that will get you the odd attack and return, the odd defensive contribution and on penalties, is that worth a transfer to like Reinders, who doesn't get defensive contributions or is unlikely to in many games, doesn't have penalties either, and actually his underlying stats are quite similar to Paquetá, and he's got Arsenal away this week. Now, game week 6 onwards, maybe you do it because it's Burnley, but even then, I don't think it's necessarily a high value move to move these players around. Dewsbury Hall, I've got him in my team, I quite like him, but he's playing Liverpool this week. Game week 6 onwards, the fixtures are good. But you look at Paquetá, it's Everton away, Arsenal away, then Brentford at home, Leeds away, Newcastle at home. So there's some okay fixtures in there. I think these kind of players you've just got to hold long term. Like, your moves should be factored around injuries, captaincy, and getting in like really good attacking players that have got really good like fixture runs. Like with Paquetá, the fixtures are fine for quite a while. Arsenal away is not great in 7. Everton away is not amazing in 6, but it's okay. Like Dewsbury Hall and Reinders are fine enablers, but they're not what I would want to be using my transfers on. So chances are, if you've got Paquetá, you got him recently, like what's the rush to get rid of him? He's not going to get you a huge amount of attacking returns, but spoiler alert, neither is Reinders or Dewsbury Hall. They're going to get you the odd return every now and again, and so I wouldn't use transfers on players like this. And this applies to any player, by the way. Always think about how high value the move actually is. If you enjoyed that video, make sure to give it a like, hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. I'd love to hit 500k before the end of the season. If not, just at some point would be great. And of course, check out Fantasy Football Hub. There's still 50% off at the moment. Links in the description below. And I'll catch you tomorrow for team selection.